Hey, how's it going everyone? It's your boy Wags here, and today we're doing another case in Shadows of Doubt. I'm in a new sandbox city called Yaspruna, and honestly, things have been quiet. For now, that is. So, instead of being a detective, for the last little while I've been an interior designer. I'll show you what I mean. Welcome to Casa de Wags. If any of you have spent time designing your apartment in this game, you'll believe me when I tell you this took way too long, way too many saves and reloads, but you know what? We got there. It's cozy, and I love coming home to it after a long day of working a case and just throwing on the music or the TV. But I know you don't care about the interior design. You care about the job. You care about the case. And that's why I admire you. So, let me brief you in. I had an alarm set for 8 on Friday, but the gurgling of my own stomach startled me awake much earlier. I needed food, and the house, being that I had just moved in, was empty. Thankfully, there was a restaurant I favored just behind the apartment, so at 6 in the morning, be it the call of a killer or the shouting, starving stomach, I set out to grab a bite to eat. Moments away from a delicious meal, the chatter of police radios sent my stomach into an even deeper whirl. A murder at 1401 Song Suites. It was right there I was troubled with one of the hardest decisions I've ever made. Do I leave and investigate the crime scene early? Or do I have breakfast at Tiffany's? On a full stomach, I made my way to apartment 1401 shortly after to begin the investigation. When I got there, the place hadn't been taped off yet, so I knocked thinking enforcers would answer. What I got instead was a woman who brushed past me rather quickly. Her name was Miriam, and she told me about a suspicious figure of average height, and then went on her way. When I returned, enforcers had just finished trotting their dirty, disgusting, outright nasty hooves all over the crime scene. In an effort to show my distaste for them, I threw my morning coffee. It's okay. I've been shot more times than you might think. Thanks to a sneaky hiding spot and a decent case of amnesia, I entered the victim's apartment for the first time, unprepared for what awaited me. On the inside, a mangled body lying beneath their desk. This was a messy job, and an even messier execution. Hai Tang, killed by shotgun wound to the back of the head while at his computer. And next to him, a toy car? Was this a signature of some sorts? I scanned it for prints, which would become our first major clue in a series of many. BB prints. I had to check around the rest of the apartment and figure out if this print was left by accident or pure intent. Tang's prints were BA, and searching through the house led me to find out that Miriam, the witness from earlier, actually lived there. Whether they were roommates or significant others, I was going to need to do some follow-up. Besides what we thought was our killer's BB prints, there was only 2 other prints in the apartment. Our victim's BA prints, and another print, BC. Logic would lead me to believe that the BC prints belonged to Miriam, so the question was, who left our unknown print? Before I left our victim's apartment, I snatched their address book, which contained way too many numbers. But even if it took all year, I would bring justice to Tang. After lunch though, because it was already like noon and I hadn't eaten since morning, I threw down a quick cup of joe and a cheeseburger at Tiffany's, and then resumed my journey to find Tang's killer. Somehow every single lead was driving me down a narrow end with not much else to go on. Security cameras were turning up dry and empty with no one to even consider. I headed back to the crime scene to get a fresh look and noticed one of the vent panels was hanging down. Was it crazy to consider our killer was navigating through the vent system? I did my best to backtrack, but all I did was end up committing multiple B&Es along the way. I flipped through the address book, making note of anyone who lived in the same building, still branching off of the vent passage idea. I then took these key suspects to the government database, and after a long and dense trial of clicking keys, every single suspect turned up innocent. Sadly, no one matched our print, and it was finally becoming apparent to me just how difficult this case was going to be. I scanned mailboxes, door handles, I browsed security footage until my eyes burned. I crawled through narrow, never-ending vents, but nothing was working. No new clues, no leads. I felt like a failure as a detective. Not to mention, someone tried to mug me and whacked me with a hammer. Aching, depressed, clueless, I thought about going to Tiffany's again for another burger, but I needed something stronger tonight. I walked stumbled down the street, and kept to myself as I chugged down a bottle of vodka, suppressing my harmful thoughts and feelings. It wasn't long before the walking became harder, and suddenly, I woke up in the hospital with a beating headache and an absurdly large bill. My mom would say two things right now: take an Advil and get the hell out of there. I had to get back onto the case. This was a sign, a wake-up call. I didn't care how long it took. I started going door to door asking for more information, but that didn't last long, because I was soon interrupted by radio chatter. A second murder, this time in the middle of the street. Tons of people just paraded over the body as if it weren't even there at all. A nearby enforcer sealed off the area, but the scene was similar to one we found at the apartment. Death by shotgun, and a toy car with our print BB. They were teasing us. That was it. I was done playing around. It was time to kick things up a notch. I had no connection to the black market society of weaponry, but there was one way I could figure out who was. I needed to find a payphone. Page by page, I looked for keywords like hardware and tools and jotted down some business addresses. Whether they would lead to a possible weapons dealer, I wasn't sure, but I didn't have anywhere else to turn. I also took down the address of a place called Handy News and Booze. It was in no way related to the case. I just thought it sounded cool, and I wanted to visit it later. Leeway's Tool Works was a blacked-out pawn shop, if I wasn't mistaken. No signs of illegal activity. My search had become even narrower. The second stop brought me to Presidio Tool Supply, and as shady-looking characters made their way out, I made my way in. This was definitely a gunsmith's den, and I needed to find the sales records. There they were. I snatched a hold of the document and got out of there. It had a lot of names on it, but I was only interested in one. L. Atia, who purchased shotgun ammo on the 1st. Could this be our brutal executioner? I sat down at the database once again and began running names. Atia wasn't a match, and neither was every other name on the list. It was useless. My energy was drained, my mind was spent, but I had one more business to check: the Ruby hardware store. I snuck into the basement, and with no one in the room, I went for it. Sitting right at the front desk, there were the sales records. All I wanted was our killer's name to be on that paper, although at that point, it was hard to be hopeful of anything. Once I was out, I read through my last lead, my last report, my last possible clue and exit to this entire crime. There was a name, G. Ferrari, who bought shotgun ammo on the same day. Was this really it? Were we about to put an end to these brutal killings? I entered the information. BB, our killer's prints, a woman named Grain. We found them, and we had an address. There was only one responsible way of finishing it. After all the time I spent mucking around, after the 2 lives they took, they needed to be taught a proper lesson.
Surprise, motherfucker!
And that was the end of it. Matching prints, a confirmed identity, everything was in place. With Grain cuffed and awaiting enforcers, I headed home to fill out the remaining paperwork, the last remnants of a solved case. I turned it in, accepted my payment, and what do you know? It was 11 o'clock, the wrap-up of the night, curtain call. So I finished my night the only way I knew how, by taking one last walk and admiring my city of Yaspruna, and of course, grabbing a burger at Tiffany's. Hey, Wags here. I really just want to say thank you for tuning in. If you're not subscribed, I try to upload pretty frequently, maybe not consistently, but I do my best and I'd appreciate any support I can get. The past 2 Shadow of Doubt videos have just taken off so well, the 8 tips and my first case. The number of you that just showed your support for the videos, the channel, and subscribed to me as well, just thank you. I appreciate it more than you'll understand. I hope I can continue to bring you content you enjoy watching, and I'd also love to hear from you. If there's anything you'd like to see specifically, please do not hesitate to recommend ideas down in the comments. One last time, thank you for watching. I'm going to have more Shadows of Doubt content as well as Deceive Inc. and hopefully some new games and topics here in the coming weeks and months, so if you want to be a part of that growth, drop me a sub maybe, and remember that liking and commenting helps me out more than you realize. So with all that said, I hope you're having a fine day, and I will see you all on the next one.